It's okay, Zesty, we're just waiting for you.
Just waiting on me.
That's okay, we're in no hurry.
Mark's not in a hurry tonight. so
Mark
we
doesn't
got-
have
we
a
got
soccer
time.
game to get to, so it's
We
okay.
got time. No rush.
All right, we are going to reconvene our regular meeting for December 17th, 2024 for organizational regular meeting of the Board of Education. Move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Would a board member like to, Zesty?
Oh, I will. Yes,
Thank
since
you.
I'm late, I will happily do it. Please stand. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and moving forward on the administration of the oath of office.
Okay, if we could have Mr. Olson and Mr. Paulson to the front.
Very official. The city clerk memorized it, by the way, so the oath of office.
I probably. Okay, so raise your right hand, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. A certificate certified.
Oh, yeah, I take a picture.
I can't open my,
Is your cap locked
it
on?
won't take my, no, it was,
It was
caps
on.
were on. No, it wasn't, I just turned it on and turned it off again, just to make sure.
That's going in the newsletter.
Okay. Just wanted, oh, I can't get it to open. First time this ever happened to me.
We'll get you an iPad,
Okay,
and you could log in the board docs.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Joan, for holding that.
oh, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. And my code thing is in my jacket pocket too. They asked me to sign it again.
So I'll bring you an iPad, and then for voting, if you can manually record Ms. Gardner's.
Thank you, okay.
All right, moving on, we're going to roll call. Everyone is here and present. Moving into the report out of closed session.
All right, in closed session, the board considered dismissal charges against a classified probationary employee and took action to approve those charges and release employee 519720 by a vote of 5-0. In closed session, the board considered dismissal charges against a classified probationary employee
Verbal Behavior Associates that I helped build 12 years ago. And I'm very excited to return to the school district where I started many years ago. I'm excited to work together with site leaders and support the outcomes of students and become part of the EUSD family. So thank you.
Congratulations. On to the approval of the for this evening. Need a motion and a second.
I'll move.
Second?
Thank you. And it passes 5-0. Moving on to the approval of the minutes from closed session.
Oh, it's like the 14th, right?
Yeah, the 14th.
14th.
November 14th, 2024.
Move approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of November 14th, 2024.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. And it passes 5-0. Moving on to the organization of the board, the election for the board, president of the Board of Education.
Do I get to know? Oh, John.
Oh, yeah. I'd like to nominate Doug Paulson
All righty.
for president.
Do we need a second?
Else.
Or,
I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any more nominations?
Here's Doug.
All right.
Fall asleep
We're not moving.
Did you vote, Joe?
Oh, no, I'm on the wrong.
She's thinking about it, Doug.
Take your time. Take your time on that.
You can still
Tallying
I
all the
was not
votes.
forced.
All right,
I
it
was
does
not
pass
coerced.
5-0. Congratulations, Doug. Let me hand this to you.
All right, thank you very much. We are now looking for a nomination for Vice President of the Board of Education.
They forced me.
Motion to approve Zesty Harper as vice president.
I'll second.
Oh, you. We're gonna get to nominate Mark.
I'm nominating Mark Manafort.
All right, by a vote of 5-0, Zesty Harper will be Vice President. We are now looking for nominations for Clerk of the Board of Education.
I nominate Mark Olson.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and second for Mark Olson. It's okay, Leonard, go ahead with the music.
Oh,
No, you can't vote no. It's not allowed. She can vote for you. Do you want her to vote for you? Did you get it?
yes, I want to vote. I'm having some trouble with my laptop, I'm sorry.
We just want to lock in Mark to the clerk position.
You don't feel good about it, Joan. Don't vote for me. It's okay.
All right, by a vote of 5-0, Mark Olson is the Clerk of the Board of Education. And we now need to appoint the Superintendent as Secretary of the Board of Education. Do I have such a motion?
I move.
I'll second.
Frank Houston moves, Esty Harper seconds. We will need to vote. There we go. And that motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Dr. Ibarra. Moving on to item D5, the 2025 school board meeting schedule. That should be in the agenda packet. Are there any corrections or changes needing to be made?
Not at this time.
At the point that everybody is satisfied with the board meeting schedule as presented, I would need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Mr. Gardner moves, Mr. Olson moves, Ms. Gardner seconds. All in favor?
We're up to a good start.
I'm off to a great start.
It'll be a long year.
Okay.
There's something in the water tonight.
All right, Mr. Gardner, no comments.
No. I'll ask Carly, but I don't need it now.
Can we please register a yes vote for Ms. Gardner? And that passes 5-0. Moving on to item D6, the board member committee assignments.
Are all the spots taken? Okay.
All spots are taken, and those will be available on the website. At this time, we'd like to move to item E1, recognizing the,
We have to,
We need to.
I'm sorry, does that
The
need to be
slate.
ratified?
Yes.
I apologize. Looking for a motion to approve.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Ms. Harper moves, Mr. Olson seconds. All in favor, please vote. All right, passes 5-0. Now moving on to item E1, Dr. Ibarra.
Yes. This is just a small token of our appreciation on behalf of the district, Mr. Houston, for your service as president.
oh, thank you very much.
You've got your own gavel in there now.
Outstanding. Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
And Frank, thank you very much for your excellent service this past year. By the way, those gavels work very well at family dinners as well.
I just wanted to thank everybody for all of their support throughout the year. I was a little on the nervous side moving up after having Mark as the president before me, so I thought I had a lot of big shoes to fill because he did such a wonderful job working us through the previous year. So watching him and kind of getting a good idea and grip on how to move forward, I want to thank you, Mark, for being there prior to me having to step up and doing this. But I want to thank all of you, staff also, the cabinet. You guys have been great, so thank you very much. And Paul, I very eagerly hand it over to you. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And let's see, do we have any public comments tonight? Did you get any cards there, Mr. Houston?
No, I do not.
All right, no public comments. We now have a public hearing to adopt statutory school fees and mitigation payments report. So I am going to open this public hearing at this point. Are there any comments? In that case, I am going to close this public hearing and move on to item F3, a report from CSEA. Are there any representatives from CSEA tonight? Seeing none, we will move on to a report from AAA.
Thank you. Good evening, Board, Cabinet, and Dr. Ibarra. For this time, we appreciate your giving of a few moments to just extend our deepest gratitude and love for EUSD, all of its staff, including CSEA, maintenance and operations, obviously the staff here in the district office. We are all deserving of this upcoming break. So we wish everyone a safe and happy holiday. Thank you.
And thank you for everything that you do, and yes, a healthful break and a recharging break. All right, moving down to the consent calendar. All written communications have already been distributed. Moving down to the consent agenda, are there any items that anybody would like pulled for separate consideration? All right, seeing nothing to be pulled, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Olson moves, Mr. Houston seconds. All in favor, please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. We are now moving down to item I apologize, to presentations, M1, the 2024 school dashboard results. Dr. Filia.
Alrighty, well, good evening, everyone. Earlier in the year, we had an opportunity to share academic data from our CASP assessment. At that time, student results were shared by reporting on the percent of students who scored proficient or advanced. Additionally, we had a chance to look at our local measure of iReady, reviewing data over a school year as well as year-over-year comparisons. A couple of weeks ago, the 2024 dashboard results were released by the California Department of Education. The dashboard results provide a different viewpoint on academic performance, focusing on both status and growth in several areas. And so this evening we'll have a chance to better understand those dashboard results. So I'm going to hand it over to Kathleen Sorensen, our Director of Program Evaluation and Accountability.
Good evening, President Houston, no. President Paulson, pardon me. Superintendent Dr. Ibarra, board members and cabinet. It is my pleasure to bring forth this presentation on the California School Dashboard. We have some hopeful and pleasant results in some of the areas of the dashboard, so I'm pretty excited to share it with you tonight. Before I dive into the dashboard, I just want to review the different student performance measures that we use in EUSD. First of all, we use iReady. The iReady diagnostics that are given 3 times per year are a local assessment. It's an assessment that we choose to use because it does give us information 3 times a year, but it is not used by the state at all. So it's just a measure for us. And that particular assessment is given to our kindergarten through 8th graders. Then the second set of assessments are the CASP and the LPAC. The CASP is a test of ELA and mathematics for grades 3rd through 8, and science, which is called the CAST, for grades 5 and 8. The LPAC is given to, the annual LPAC is given to all students in grades kindergarten through 8th grade. This year, for the first year since we started TK, we are not giving the test to our TK students. They are developing a new test for our TK students. So at this point, they aren't being tested at all, and their English learner status is TBD in our system, to be determined. Then in the results of the CASP are reported in a percentage of students who are proficient, or students of percentage of students who exceeded the standard, percentage of students who met the standard, students who were nearly met the standard, and students who were below the standard. The LPAC reports students at 4 proficiency levels, 1 being the lowest, 4 being the highest. Students need to be a 4 to reclassify and meet several other criteria. Then finally, the California School Dashboard, which is a growth measure. So it measures our data quite a bit differently. It uses data from the CASP and the LPAC, but it doesn't necessarily report the data out in percentages of students who are proficient. It looks at status and growth. So the dashboard for elementary districts covers these 5 areas. We have our academic indicators, which are English language arts and mathematics. Then our English learner progress indicator, which measures the percentage of students who are meeting their growth in their progress toward becoming proficient in English. Then we have chronic absenteeism and suspension rate. And I'm sure that you've heard of the college and career indicator and the graduation rate indicator, which only apply to districts that have high schools. Okay, so just a little bit about the dashboard ratings. One of the tools in the dashboard that I really appreciate is the 5x5 grid. So this is an example of a generic 5x5 grid that's not attached to any of the indicators. And what this shows is the status, which is the column on the left. Oops. Okay, I practiced this. Okay, I'm just going to tell you about it. So the status is the column on the left, and then the growth is the row on the top. Hold it in. Okay, hold it. Don't just touch it. Thank you. So if a school had a status of high and they maintained in growth, they would be a green. That's how the colors are determined through this grid style. And you'll see a little bit about that, more about each one as we go through. You can see also that the little dials will show the lowest performance is red and the highest performance is blue. The dashboard was really created to help parents and community members understand how well our schools are performing and how well student groups are performing. So it was designed to be user-friendly for parents. So perhaps some of the pieces of the dashboard are user-friendly. I think the dials are a little bit helpful. Some of the design maybe is a little more difficult. So we're going to start with the academic indicators, which are the English language arts and mathematics. And we talked about the fact that the dashboard looks at status and growth. So to determine the status for English language arts and mathematics, they look at distance from standard. So you can see here that level three is proficient on the CASP, and that's a scale score range of 2432 to 2490. The lowest possible scale score you can get in a level 3, which is proficient or met, is 2432. This particular student got a 2420. So that student is 12 points below the standard. Okay, the goal, of course, would be to be above the standard, to be perhaps a 2440, and then that student would be above the standard. The scale score ranges are different for every grade level, so this is just a sample grade level. Okay, so the state takes every student, determines what their distance from standard is, then they take all of those distance from standards, add them up, and average them to get a distance from standard for each school, each district, and each student group. Okay, so based on that, these are the results for EUSD, and if you click on the image of the dial, it'll take you directly to the web page and you'll get live results. And this shows that in language arts, as a district, our performance level is orange, so we're 42 points below standard. We actually maintained as we grew a half a point, and then of course it shows the number of students tested. When you compare that to California, you'll see that California has a distance from standard of 13.2 with, they also maintained with an increase of 0.4 points. So while the distance from standard was quite a bit different, the growth was nearly the same. Down at the bottom, you'll see the distribution of our student groups in Escondido, and you can see that our English learners, foster youth, homeless, long-term English learners, and students with disabilities are in the red, and then it ranges all the way up to our Asian students, Filipinos, 2 or more races, and white that are in the green. Our long-term English learners are a new group this year. This is the first year that student group has been included. So now we look at 14 different student groups. Okay, now I'm going to go to the grid, and this is the specific grid for English language arts. And again, if you, oops, it's not going to work for me, but if you click on it, it should take you to the live results. So this is just to show you how the grid works. So we are Escondido. Our district is right here in the orange. So we were at low and we maintained, so that puts us at orange. But I do want to point out that we had some schools that are schools in the district that performed very well. We have 2 schools that were in the green, LR Green, who increased. I'm sorry, we have more than that in the green. LR Green increased, Reedy Creek increased, and Bernardo was maintained. Then we have a number of schools that were low performing, but they increased. So if they increased, then they increased by a certain number of points, as you can see in the top of the column. And we have FAR, Felicita, Glenview, Hidden Valley, Mission, North Broadway, that all increased, and then Rock Springs increased significantly. Rock Springs really grew a lot. As a matter of fact, Rock Springs was just a little shy of meeting the criteria to move up a performance level. Okay, and then I wanted to show you what the comparison was for each school. So this is comparing the 2023 results to the 2024 results. So you can see here that there were several schools that improved in color, and then you can also see what the difference is and their distance from standard. So most of our schools are in the negative, we're looking for that number to decline. We have a few schools that are in the positive, Bernardo, for instance, that we would want the number, since it's a positive number, we'd want it to increase. So we do have some celebrations. Bernardo, LR Green, and Reedy Creek are all at the green performance levels. Then we can celebrate that FAR moved from orange to yellow. Felicita moved 2 levels from red to yellow. North Broadway moved from orange to yellow. Hidden Valley moved from orange to yellow. Mission moved from orange to yellow. And Rock Springs, again, had significant growth, but it was just a little shy of making it over to the green. Okay, and next we're going to move on to our math results. And here you can see that our performance level is orange with a distance from standard of 64 points below standard. And here we did quite a bit better than English Language Arts and increased by 2.9 points, which was just 1/10 of a point from making it to the increased column. When we look at California, the performance level is also orange with a distance from standard of 47.6 points below standard. And then if you look at our student groups, California was also maintained, but was only maintained at an increase of 1.5 points. Then if you look at our student groups, again, they're spread out fairly evenly amongst the different performance levels. Then if you look at the 5x5 grid, we're very pleased to report that the majority of our students had increased results. You can see that most of our schools are in that increased or increased significantly column. So EUSD is in the maintained, as a district, is in the maintained column, but you can see that, first of all, Reedy Creek increased significantly in math and is in the blue. So that's a huge gain. You can see that Bernardo and LR Green are in green and also increased. Then in the yellow group, in terms of performance, FAR and Felicita also increased significantly. Then we have Conway, Glenview, Juniper, Miller. I apologize. I lost most of my notes, and I can't read the names of all the schools. They're a little bit too tiny, but if you click in that, you should be able to read them. Okay, and then if you look at the results by school, again, I think the colors tell a story about our schools and how much of an increase we saw in math when you look at all of the schools who increased. Here we see Reedy Creek move from green to yellow. Central, FAR, Felicita, Glenview, Juniper, Miller, North Broadway, Oak Hill, Pioneer, and Rincon all grew from an orange performance level to a yellow performance level, and Hidden Valley grew from a red to an orange performance level. Okay, and next we're going to move on to science. This is the first year that the CAST results have been included in the California School Dashboard results. Since it's the first year, there's nothing to compare us to, or there's no other year to compare us to, so there are no performance colors for anyone. We are, and again, this test is given to 5th and 8th graders, and we are 18.5 points below standard, and we grew by declined by 0.6 points. Then, as far as the state goes, they're 13.5 points below standard, with an increase of 0.1 points.
Ms. Sorensen, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So it says we declined by 0.6 points. Decline from what, if this is the first time it's being included?
So they did, while it's the first time that it's being included in the dashboard results, they do have the results from last year. They can measure distance from standard. What they're waiting to look at is to develop what the cut scores are to determine what the levels are in terms of low or very low, low, and then what, in terms of growth, what the cut scores are for that to add the colors. So that will happen next year.
Okay, thank you.
I don't think so. Yeah. I suppose you could say that. Yeah. Okay, next we have our English Learner Progress Indicator. And if you recall, when we presented our CASP results earlier, we gave you our projected scores, what we believed our projection was, and our projection was very, very close. So just as a review, I know I explained this last time, but as a review, to determine what our English Learner Progress Indicator is, we look at the percentage of students who met their growth goal on the LPAC. So students who took the test in 2023 and 2024, the annual assessment, if they grew one level or stayed at a 4, then they met their growth. We know from years of English learner data with the LPAC and the CELT before that it often takes students a little bit longer to make it out of level 2 and 3. So the state determined that there would be a cut score, a midpoint cut score in the scale score level for 2s and 3s. So there is students can be a 2 low or a 2 high. If they grow from a 2 low to a 2 high or a 3 low to a 3 high, that's considered growth too. So there are quite a few opportunities for the students to be able to display the growth. So that growth is then the number of students who made progress is then divided by the number of students who took the assessment to get the LP status. The LP status isn't just growth from our students. If a student took the test in 2023 in a different district and then took it in 2024 in our district, that student is still counted, if that makes sense. So they're not necessarily matched cohorts from our student group.
I had a question. What is the summative alternative?
That is the test that some of our students with IEPs take, a very small number. I would say probably less than 100 students take the alternative LPAC.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I figured, because the test results between both years are vastly different. So I assume there's like so few students that one student could change the numbers dramatically.
Yes, very, very few students. And some of the students have, very little language. Okay, so when we look at our English Learner Performance Indicator on the dashboard, it was disappointing. Last year we were in the green. This year we are in orange. We have 43.4% of our students who made progress, who met their goal, which was a decline of 5.5%. Then that number of students is the number of students who had a 23 and a 24 assessment. It's not the number of our English learners. Then on this indicator, the only student groups we look at are our English learners and our long-term English learners, and both groups are in orange.
Can we just stop on this one for a minute and just ask what the analysis is of why we may have declined and what we might be thinking about doing to make sure those students are making progress?
Well, perhaps I can talk about why the decline, and then you can. So, if you recall, when I presented this data before with the projected data, I showed you several years' worth of data. So the year before last, our scores were just around what they are now, maybe slightly higher. Then it increased a lot last year and then went back to what it was. So last year we had a bit of a spike, which was great, but we weren't able to sustain that growth. It's back to what it has been before. So I'll let Dr. Filia talk about what we're planning.
So, as we had spoken before, a lot of the focus around our professional development with our principals, with our teacher teams, has had an emphasis with English learners and providing strategies, ensuring that our schools, that our teachers have schedules and that ELD is being taught. So English language development, ensuring that there's that is built in and monitored, as well as the actual strategies. So there's the designated ELD time, and then there's also the integrated ELD time. And really what that means is the integration piece is the idea that there should be a focus, a language objective, a focus on how teachers are able to differentiate and support their language development across the content areas. So we have spent some time with our principals going pretty deeply into an analysis of the data that for each of their schools, looking by school, by grade level, even by classroom, to really be able to understand and see who are the students that didn't make any progress, because that obviously isn't acceptable, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to respond to those needs. So it's really just been a focus around supporting our teachers, providing lots of professional development opportunities as well, and then working with our principals.
Okay, so this is the 5x5 grid, again, that shows that EUSD has a status of low and a growth level of decline. We can celebrate that Bear Valley increased significantly, and Conway and Rose also have a performance level of green and also increased. Miller and Rincon increased with a performance level of yellow. And then if we look at schools, we do have a few things to celebrate with the schools. Again, this is 23 compared to 24. And I do want to acknowledge the tremendous growth at Bear Valley, Conway, and Rose. Bear Valley and Rose actually grew 2 performance levels, and Conway grew 1 performance level. Okay, and then we're going to move on to chronic absenteeism. So a student is designated as chronically absent if they miss 10% or more of the days they are enrolled in school. And the way this works with the state is they look at any student who's been enrolled in our schools 30 or more days. If there's a student who's enrolled for 30 days and they miss 3 days, then they're considered chronically absent. If that student was enrolled for at least 30 days in our district, that mark of having a student that's chronically absent stays with us. So that's why you may notice that the number of students looks like it's higher than our actual enrollment. And that's why, because students who have left the district but were enrolled at least 30 days in the district count. So with that being said, we have a lot to celebrate with chronic absenteeism, thanks to the hard work of our ISS team and our school site staff. Our chronic absenteeism rate has declined by 9.4%. The state, as compared to the state decline of 5.7%. So our rate of chronically absent students last year was still 27.3, as compared to the state results of 18.6. However, we did have a pretty significant decline. And you can see that most of our student groups are residing in that yellow area, because we're still, the threshold for what is chronic absenteeism and what a high rate, a low rate, et cetera, is stayed the same. It's the same as it was before the pandemic, while the rates increased significantly. So while our rates have declined a lot, they're still in that high rate. Okay, and then if we go to the 5x5 grid, you can see that all of our schools declined significantly. They're all in that same column on the far right-hand side. When you first look at it, it looks like they forgot some of our schools, but there's a little link that shows the rest of them on that bottom right-hand corner. Most of our schools had a status of very high chronic absenteeism, and then Bernardo, Quantum, and Reedy Creek had a status of just high. So I know that our schools and ISS are continuing to work very, very hard on chronic absenteeism, and the results so far are looking like we are continuing to improve in that area. And then the school results are very similar. You can see that they're all yellow. And it does show that schools improved, but they're still in that same range of, even though there was a significant decline, because that rate of chronic absenteeism is still at the threshold of being pretty high, they still remain at yellow. I can say that Farr and Glenview did have really a very significant decline. They were both in the 40s and went down to the mid-20s. Okay, and then on to our suspension rate. And there's good news about our suspension rate as well. The suspension rate on the dashboard for EUSD was 3.2% of our students were suspended for at least one day, representing a decline of 0.4%. So again, thanks to the hard work of ISS and school sites, in comparison, the statewide rate declined by 0.3, so slightly less, with a rate that was exactly the same. 3.2% of students were suspended for at least one day. And then you can see that the majority of our student groups are in the yellow and the orange.
And so I've got, just help me out on this again with the dial. We've got virtually identical statistic, 3.2% suspended at least one day. We show a greater decline in that, but we wind up in yellow as opposed to the state that winds up in green.
Oh.
Help me.
I'm glad I actually know the answer. I was afraid I wouldn't. It's because
I knew you would.
It's because the state rate is only, oh no, that was for chronic absenteeism. So I don't know the answer, and I will have to get that to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot for the state ratings because we're just given this, but it's just a matter of curiosity.
But that's a great question. If it were chronic absenteeism, I would know, but in this case, I do not, and I can put it in the update tomorrow.
I think the state's trying to make itself feel better.
That's a very good question. Okay, if we were to look at the 4x4 grid, you can kind of see where all of the schools land. And you can see that most of our schools were either in the maintained, declined, or declined significantly column. So I can see that North Broadway and Rock Springs were green and declined significantly. Then in our declined column, we have Conway and Limitless, who are blue. And then in the maintained, Bernardo and Miller. Then you can see that Quantum is in the green and also declined. Bear Valley, Glenview, Mission, Rincon, and Rose are also green and declined. The district declined and remains in yellow. Del Dios and Hidden Valley also declined. And Central, Reedy Creek were also in the green but maintained, and Felicita also maintained. Then if you look at schools, this chart is very colorful. And there was actually quite a bit of performance level change for suspension data in a positive way. You can see that the increase included Limitless that went from green to blue, North Broadway that went to orange to green, Quantum orange to green, Rose orange to green, Rock Springs orange to green, Bear Valley yellow to green, Del Dios red to yellow, Hidden Valley red to yellow, Mission Middle School orange to green, and Rincon orange to green. There was really, especially in middle school, there was quite a bit of improvement. And then finally, when we presented our CASP data, we presented a comparison to school districts in San Diego County that have similar demographics. So this is the same school districts that we presented before, Cajon Valley, Lemon Grove, and National Elementary, that again all have very similar demographics to us. And it just shows a comparison of their color and their distance from standard, or their proficiency or percentages compared to ours. Okay, questions?
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I like the two columns that was comparing the each school from year to year. That was very helpful to understand and see the difference. I like that. You know, like I like visuals. I just had one comment. I was glad they were starting to track the long-term English learners in this. I think that's going to be very helpful. I think that's something we need to pay attention to. If we've had an English learner for 7 years and they're not progressing, what are we missing in that case? So I was happy to see that. I was also happy to see our absentee decline so much, which was nice. But yeah, I'm excited to see the winter iReady results, and I would hope we would have a focus on what our expectation of where they should be, where they end up, and any changes we're going to make, you know, into the spring semester to really help them reach their goals by the end of the year. That was it.
Questions, comments? I'm also very interested in this issue of the long-term English learners, and specifically looking at, you know, these are students who have, in many cases, been with us for their entire educational careers, and many of whom were born here, and I agree that we need to make sure that the curriculum we're offering, they may need something a little different, but also we may need to do something additional, whether it's in an after-school setting or in community partnerships, to make sure that those students aren't only interacting in English during the school day. And that's really what it takes to move students into the English proficient realm. So, you know, I mean, I'm not asking for an answer there. That is one that is facing every school district in the state. And I just hope we can be leaders in figuring out what can we do to assist those students better. Thank you. Anything else? All right, thank you. All right, next up is item M2, Business Services. And Andy, just want to make sure that we're on the correct one. We are on M2, Resolution 2425-11, Statutory School Fees and Mitigation Payment Report.
No, this should be, is it M1? The
M2.
first interim?
Okay, but we have not done M2 yet.
No,
I am so sorry.
on O1.
I am on the public site. Okay, the public agenda has an M2, item M2.
Is that, I think I saw that on I don't know if that's an outdated version, the one that was on the screen there.
Okay, so we do need to just notice the public that if you are following along on the agenda, we do not have an M2, and that correction will be made to our agenda with my apologies. So we are going to move to item O1, Business Services 2425, first interim.
That M2, I believe, becomes O3 for everybody at home.
Oh, yeah, 03. I moved to 03. So, it's fine.
I'm on the public side. I'm seeing what the public is seeing.
Oh.
It is just fine as long as we hit everything.
Are we going to do that as M2, or do you want to
Nope,
leave that as
we are
M3?
going to go on to item O1, Business Services, first interim report for 24-25. We are looking forward to it.
Okay.
It does.
Good evening. All right. O1, first interim report. So this is the first opportunity the board has to, as we update our budget at midway point of the year, essentially here in December, and the first opportunity the board has to adopt a revision to our adopted budget that we adopted in June. So this is the version of our budget, the summary of our budget from June when we adopted that for the current year. And then this is now the updated first interim version of our adopted budget for the current year. We've, as always, done the math for you here, and so there's a variety of changes from our revenues and expenses and our ending balance. And I'm actually going to call up Mrs. Michelle Cagle to explain these changes.
Good evening. Okay, we'll first go over the changes to the revenue. There was a $914,000 reduction in our LCFF funding. That's made of two components. The significant one being the reinstatement of the charter school shift. That was suspended during COVID. Basically, the state doesn't want to pay for the same student twice. If a student was attending our district last year and they've moved to a charter this year, the state's funding them on the charter allocation and they'll be funding them on our allocation. So we need to reduce our allocation by the net shift of students going between a district and a charter. For this year, that equated to 80 students. The $169,000 reduction is due to our enrollment coming in lower than we projected at the time of adoption by 242 students. Our DHH billing, our agency has agreements with local districts to provide deaf and hard of hearing services to their students. In the past, that revenue and expense was in our restricted column associated with all of our general special education costs. And working with Patrick, we were able to really identify all of the costs associated with this program. In doing so, it made sense to give it its own resource and move it into the unrestricted column so that we could accurately bill all of our agencies, all of the other agencies for the services we're providing to them. That estimated cost for this year is $2 million in revenue and $2 million in expenses. Our title carryover, since adoption, we've closed our books on our 23-24 budget. With that process, we had more carryover than we originally anticipated. Title I had $1.2 million. And with Title I, it's important to note that the federal government gave us an additional $500,000 for this year's entitlement. You'll see the increase in the revenue and the expense for that item. Our community schools, in May we knew we would be receiving, 16 of our sites would be receiving $300,000 for a total of 4.8. However, we had not received the final grant award notification from the state, so during adoption we weren't able to recognize that grant. We've since recognized that in our revenue and our expenses. Our ESSER carryover, that's tied to the capital projects that we thought would be completed by June 30th. They got delayed. They were completed in July and in August. Since then, we have fully expended our ESSER funding by the deadline of September 30th. Moving on to our expenses, the budget now reflects the negotiated and potential settlements. There's a $700,000 increase in our excess liability insurance. If you recall, back in October of 2019, Governor Newsom signed into legislation AB 218, which increased the statutory limitations for filing certain claims. As those claims were coming in, the insurance cost was predicted to be $394,000. At that time, they allowed us to split that cost between last fiscal year and this fiscal year. But as the claims have come in, they're saying that cost to our insurance is going to go up by $700,000. It's predicted that's going to be an ongoing cost until all the claims within California have been settled. We increased our TK teachers due to having a higher enrollment than what we thought at the time of adoption. And then I've discussed the carryover community schools, DHH, the expenses that relate to the revenue that we've added. With ELOP, we had an additional $6 million in carryover when we closed the 23-24 books. Any questions? No? Okay, Andy will talk about how that impacts our MYP.
Thank you, Michelle. So as we mentioned, the MYP, so here's now the revision to our adopted budget. The first interim is the current year here, and then that takes us into the next year. So this year here in the ending fund balance and the deficit there is already accounting for there being $4.6 million in reduced expenses, as we've been talking about for quite a while now. So that's how that math would work out. And then as we go into our third year, the year we would use to determine our fiscal solvency, again, this deficit here and ending fund balance is also reflective of if that 4.6 reduction in expenses and also the 3.3 in that year reduction has been made. If we were to not have made those, then those would be added to those deficits and would further drive down the ending fund balance by those amounts. But the way that it stands now, and the work obviously that we're going to be doing in our workshops, or I'm sorry, our study sessions in February and March as we work towards our adopted budget for next year, that's where we'll be discussing what those budget reductions could be and putting that before the board and having some in-depth conversations around that. Confident that we're going to get to those, and that happening will keep us above our reserve, that green box there being the ending fund balance in the third year being above that reserve, so we would have a positive certification to our first interim budget as adopted, if it were adopted like that tonight. Questions so far?
I was hoping I misread the Friday update where it said $7.5 million, so I guess I was not misreading it. But
7.5 in what regard?
That's on the first page, the adopted versus first in the changes, that we have a $7.5 million.
Back here?
Yeah, yeah. And the third section on the bottom left. It's
So are we
negative
talking about over here?
down, yeah, down,
Down here?
yeah, left, yeah. Mhm.
So that's just a math between the difference between this and this.
But we've lost 7.5, or am I not understanding that correctly?
Yes, in total, between the adopted budget and that, yes.
We've had an increase of 7.5 million in costs in this year, right?
Come on.
Sorry. No, we've increased our cost by 7.5, right?
No,
No?
our overall net
Okay.
change in unrestricted was 1.8. What you're seeing is how we allocated those commitments at the bottom had changed. We had.
Okay,
Looking at the difference.
so maybe I didn't read it right, which is good.
Yeah, we've moved over $3 million into the increased sped from at adoption, it was in restricted, now it's in unrestricted, and so the state mitigation commitment went down. That's
Okay.
the change.
Okay, good,
Just
okay.
how we
So our-
allocated it.
Our total costs haven't gone up that
Correct.
much. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
No, that the total cost here, expenses will be reflected here. And as we discussed, some of that's matching revenue and expense. Okay. Getting back to where we left off. All right. MYP, we're good? Okay. Forecaster, updating the forecaster, which is a visual representation of our multi-year projection. So as we put on the top, there's the ending balances in that grid at the top. So the dark blue line is reflective of the adopted multi-year projection from June, and then the adjusted current year budget, the first interim, is the light blue line below that. Okay, so that just graphically represents our MYP, that black line there being that we just averaged out the minimum reserve there to have a straight line across, and as long as the blue line doesn't touch the black line, we would be fiscally solvent. Okay, any questions on the forecaster before I move on? All right, I'm going to keep updating it and showing it. Okay, now we're going to get into some data exploration and some of the work that we've been doing. We talked about at a previous board meeting. Attendance enrollment obviously is it's the most important factor when it comes to not only the learning and everything that happens in our classrooms, but also our funding. So first on the left here, something, a little bit of a, I would say is not necessary. We talk about our enrollment decline, and certainly we've had that. And we've talked about our projected enrollment came in less than, our actual enrollment came in less than our projected enrollment. But our actual enrollment, it's a different story. What I wanted to point out here is that 2,203 students are enrolled right now in our schools that were not here last year, okay? So new students to us. They were not our students last year, they were our students this year, okay? And of that, 1,598 of them are TK and Kinder, right? So
Okay.
we know that we're going to have
How many?
1,598. I have that on the bottom down there.
Okay, so, okay.
Okay, so then 2,363 students were here last year and are not here now. Okay, I'm going to walk you through a variety of, we're going to drill down on this here. Okay, so but 1,540 of those are purposeful. That's a success. Those are 8th graders that have matriculated out of our schools. So we know we're going to get students that have never been in school before starting at TK or Kinder. And we know that if we do our jobs right, we're going to have a large number of students leave us after 8th grade, right? So take the net out of that. And this is a snapshot in time. Our enrollment, we have students enroll and disenroll every day, okay? So this snapshot, this was last week's numbers. At that time, 823 students left the district since last year, but 605 joined us since last year. And the important point of that is why is that important? There's something to be learned about why 605 students and their families chose to enroll in our district. We talk a lot about our enrollment decline. Certainly, we've lost more than we gained. But 605 students and their families chose us. Yes, 823, taking out the 8th graders and the TK and kinder. These are in the middle grades. 823 families and their students chose to go somewhere else for a variety of reasons. They moved or other things. I have a slide. We're going to go into some of that here next. But 605 students chose to be here. So when we talk about we lost 200 kids, whatever that enrollment decline, that's a net. 605 families chose us. And there's something to be learned there that hopefully we can use to apply to the 823 that chose to go somewhere else. And that's why I wanted to get down to these factors here. Now, I'm going to have Michelle come up real quick here because this colorful chart here is an exploration of what grade levels we're losing the students at for what we can use that data for. So, Michelle, you want to walk us through what this chart means?
Okay, so in order to be able to really start to analyze the data, it was important to identify where we were losing those students. Where did we want to start? And what this chart is showing is if we had a student in kindergarten, did they transition to first grade to second grade? And then the column is where it's the net of where we lost them. We had some enrolling, some exiting, and you can see that we're losing a lot of our students from 5th to 6th grade, and then from 6th to 7th and 7th to 8th. With that data, we went and dug a little deeper as to where they were going.
Any questions on that last chart real quick before I move on? Okay, so where we're going with this next is we looked at the students that left us out of that 823. Where did they go? So the percentage here is on the left side here out of that population. Now this is kind of the high numbers. This list can go on too in very low percentages. One student went here, wherever. But this is the majority of them here on the left. So we lost 8% to one school, 6% to another, and then 4% to a variety of other smaller charters here in town, and 2% to private schools that aren't necessarily charter schools. But then you look at 51% of our students left the district. So I'm going to get into that in a second. But then you have the 14% and the 5% out of state, out of country. Not a whole lot we can do there. There's decisions made at the family level that they're moving out of the area for whatever reason is driving that. But that 51% that are just moved out of the district, we drilled down into that. And so we took the majority of that. Again, this list can go on and on as well as you get into ones and twos here and there. But we took the majority of the top ones there, and the bulk number here on the right, far right side, that's the actual representation of the kids that are representing these percentages here in this chart. And so we look at this, and this is kind of at the beginning stages here. We have a lot more drilling down to do and figuring out why and they would go to some of these districts. Certainly, what we're working on now, we weren't ready to present it in full, but I'll just kind of give a little bit of ahead of time. We'll come back and present this more thoroughly when it's complete and we can stand on this data, is a lot of these students live here still but chose to go to these other districts. Now that could be because a parent lives or works near one of these districts and took their student there. There's a variety of reasons. So that's the work we're doing now, is the why. But you can see here, this is where our students that could go here, where they're going now, since the ones that were here last year, where they're going this year. So I wanted to give that insight. It's something we had talked about, is to figure out what grade levels are we losing and where are they going, so that we can then use that data to determine what we can do about it and put an action plan together for how we're going to help mitigate that. And again, what are we learning from the 605 that chose us since last year that we can use to apply to these kids here? Any questions before I move on? Okay. And then I know we talked about chronic absenteeism in the last presentation, and you know if you've gotten the Happy Fridays or the every weekly message thing, Every Learner Weekly. We talk a lot about every account. Attendance, that's a priority right now. Obviously, if we can have all the kids in the world enrolled here, but if they don't come to school, they're not going to learn. And so this year, it's a priority. It is something we put a lot of energy behind. Certainly, our schools are doing some amazing things around improving attendance. And what this chart shows you, the blue line is this is every day, day by day of the school year. From the first day of school, it ends at the last day before Thanksgiving break. Every single day's attendance across the district. Now, we have these charts school by school, just showing you the top level data for the district. Green line is this year. Blue line is last year. And there's some obvious points here that you might ask questions about. I filled in the details, like the big drop here in last year. That was the day after the big hurricane that never really came to be. There were some storms, but it wasn't as severe. But either way, attendance was down across all of the area on that day. And then another day that we talk a lot about that attendance is down on is that day after Halloween. This year we saw a little bit more of a drop than last year. And I looked at, well, why would that be? And it looks like, to me, as a parent of children myself, the day after Halloween this year was Friday. Last year, the day after Halloween was Wednesday. We already have a dip in attendance on Fridays. Add to that, it's the day after Halloween. I think that explains why there's that drop. Is there something that can be adjusted to accommodate for that, or things that we can do? Certainly. But I just wanted to put the data before you so that we have good data for any decisions we might make. And then, of course, you look at last year, this year, the last day before Thanksgiving break. Families might be leaving town early, get ahead of the traffic, but we see a dip in our attendance rate on those days. But as you can see overall, and summarize it over here on the left, so from the first day of school to the day before Thanksgiving break, that period of time last year, we had a 92.7% ADA, and this year, same period, 93.8%. So we're showing growth in our attendance rate last year to this year. Is there any questions about this chart? Yeah, so what you're seeing is a dip on Mondays, a dip on Fridays, right? And so if we're going to target initiatives towards increasing attendance, certainly Mondays and Fridays are things that are days we need to really focus on. We're doing really well on Wednesdays in the middle of the week. I'm sure we obviously could do better, but if whatever we do on Monday and Friday, that's going to spill over to Wednesdays too. But I think we're probably always going to see a little bit of a dip. But that's why it's important to look at this data, is to not just to report what it is, but to see what can we do about it. And so now we know where our dips in our data are, where dips in attendance, and those are where we're going to do more initiatives in order to bring that up on those days. Okay, any other questions or comments about this slide? And we have this updated. Our Natalie over in our ISS department and leads up our attendance campaign through the SEAT program that we have at our schools. And her team updates this on an almost daily basis. We're looking at it for insight and kind of tracking it, and down to the school level. And the schools are tracking it and doing things to address attendance. Every day counts in EUSD.
No, I think this is a great visual that really specifies where the issues are, what the issue is, and if we could just simply flatten this out with that Wednesday attendance, that would make a huge difference in the programs we could offer for our students. I also think the previous slide, digging down, because there's a lot of rumors of where our students go, but what we've had is a lot of rumors, and getting into some real data of what our families are saying, why they're leaving. I mean, I understand if they're leaving for economic reasons, going out of state, out of county, get that. But if there's something we can do here, that's great information.
Absolutely. So as we continue to explore the why now, we know the where they're going. Now we're going to find out, working on the why. That could be through interviews, that could be phone calls. There's a lot of things, especially if we start to hear parents might want to be disenrolling. These are times for us to having those conversations. We might not be able to stop them in that moment, but at least we can learn from it. And whatever we learn there, we can hopefully use to mitigate against others wanting to leave. But again, remember, 605 chose us. So it's not all bad news. 605 families chose to be here that weren't here last year. Many others have continued to stay here. All right, so Now we're at the future outlook. So looking in the crystal ball, what recently was released by the Legislative Analyst Office as they do their, like the financial calculations, costing out bills and all of that, and looking at the state budget overall. The way that they look at the state budget, the state finances, tax revenues, and expenses, and all of that, they are projecting that the calculated COLA would actually be reduced by about 0.47%. Now, our budget for that year and our MYP for next year is based on a revenue expectation that's driven by a 2.93% COLA. They're forecasting that to go down to 2.46. If that, and we're waiting to see what the governor says in January. What that result would be was about $800,000 a year starting in next year that would carry forward if they were to reduce that COLA. So we're going to be waiting eagerly to see what the governor says. One thing that was in that report, if you had an opportunity to read it, it's quite lengthy, something that's kind of been forgotten, but that's a deferral. And that's where essentially just we get an allowance every month from the state, right? And it's not necessarily an equal 1/12 split, but we get an allowance every month. Right now, to balance the budget, the governor of the state has shifted so we don't get our June allowance, and they pay us in July. So they're able to move it into another fiscal year to kind of kick the can down the road, but they give it back. So it's 1 month to the next. Now, when it's just 1 month, we have our reserves that we're able to meet payroll. It doesn't become a cash flow problem. It really starts to become an issue if they do several months of deferrals. Right now, it's just the 1 month. So we don't talk about it a lot. But what the LAO's office, what the Legislature Office, LAO, what they're saying is that we should pay down that deferral, get rid of the deferral first. So if there are increased tax revenues, is to apply those to get rid of the deferral first. And then that's also a part of why they're projecting the COLA to come down, is because we still have to pay our bills in the year that they're from, and that would be getting rid of that deferral. So it all comes down to what the governor proposes in January, but then as it goes through negotiations in the legislature, then we get to the May revision. That's what our adopted budget would be based on. That's the last piece of information we get. And of course, the state doesn't adopt their budget until after we adopt ours, but usually the May revision is, in most years, there's been some years where it's very, fluctuates a lot. Most years, I think this will be one where the May revision will be reflective of mostly what that state's adopted budget would be. So what the governor says in January isn't set in stone. Really, we're going to wait to see what they say in May when they revise that. But we'll get a lot of insight on what he's thinking and what the legislature's thinking about what we hear in January. We're going to be working on our enrollment projections for next year. Certainly with even armed with a whole bunch of more information now and data on what drives the ins and outs when it comes to enrollment. But we'll be working on that as well as measuring our average daily attendance. That goes all the way, that period's measured through April, all the way through the end of March. And then that becomes what our average daily attendance is used for funding. The work doesn't stop there. The funding measurement stops there, but the work of keeping our kids engaged in school continues on all the way to the last day of school. But we'll be reporting that to you at another board meeting when we get that. But every time we come before you with a budget presentation, we're going to keep showing you the updated daily chart. I'm going to keep talking about where we're at on our exploration of where the kids are going and why, and just keep that conversation going. And then what actions, and looking for input too, on what actions we could take and what we can do to solicit help from the community to help us with our attendance and enrollment. So like I said, next steps, January 19th, governor's budget proposal. And then after that, before that, sorry, at our next board meeting in January, our auditor will come before you and present the audit of our 23-24 fiscal year. So that'll be the last we mention, the 23-24 year. We'll be able to put that to bed after that report to you. And then the budget workshop is another meeting that we'll be having, and that's where we're going to start the really in-depth conversations around our adopted budget for next year, where we stand at that point. We'll kind of give you more of an update. We'll be doing a second interim in March, but we'll give you kind of an update at that point where we are, and really start those discussions about what we're going to do about those red numbers on the MYP that I showed you, the budget reductions we need to make, and planning forward so that we can provide the best educational experience here for our students within the resources that we have. So we'll start that in February here in open with the board. Are there any questions or comments?
Anyone else? Thank you for the presentation. I had a couple questions. So I appreciate you looking at the attendance numbers because that's really important. And it's actually one of the reasons I ran for the board is because of my long history with charters. I would get parents calling me that their kid didn't get into charter, and they were so upset that their kids' future is ruined. They're going to be at risk when they go to school. And that was one of my greatest motivations because I don't think any parent or family should go through that. So I definitely know a lot of the concerns parents have of why they're not putting their kids in our schools, even though we have great programs, we have great teachers. And I think that's one of our core issues is just what's happening in our schools and the perception of what's happening. Like, for example, I don't know if you looked at like Quantum or Conway, but I would assume that their middle school number, I mean, the sixth graders for Conway, and we don't have that drop at Quantum either. Like going to sixth grade, we don't see a drop at Conway, and we don't see that drop in Quantum. And so maybe that's something we want to look at is alternative options for our middle schools. Because that, again, that's a big fear factor, that big jump, the bigger students, you know, honestly, violence is always a worry of our parents. That I mean, I know our suspensions are down, but again, our reputation, I think, is holding a lot of parents and families back. I think if they went on campus, they would see the difference.
Yes.
They really would. And how do we make that apparent to our community even more than we already are? Because again, I think that's what's holding our parents back, that they're willing to drive them to Poway and, you know, Vista and Oceanside, because they feel like it's a safer situation for them, and their students will get, you know, a better education. So I think that's really important that we're looking at that. And then I appreciate the upcoming workshops for the budget because we got a lot to tackle. And I'm sure you have already thought of this, but is there anything that we can do this year to help next year? I mean, you put some things in place last year to kind of slow the bleed. I mean, because still 4.6 next year is going to be a huge
Yeah,
hit
absolutely.
to our,
well, at all times, we need to be looking for ways we can operate more efficiently in single thing that we're doing. And we've gone through some extras, looking at any contracts we have, any services we have, what do we need? Certainly, if a position becomes open, we analyze that every single time. We're always reassessing what our needs are whenever we have the opportunity to make a change. That might be by filling a vacancy, renewing a contract, or any of that. And so at all times, we're doing that. Reassessing where we stand. But then also in what we're continuing to do, be it in our operations, in any of that, is to always be looking for a more efficient way to be able to do that, to be able to get to our desired outcome at the most efficient, lowest cost way. And that's an effort that we're always doing and looking at every decision we make with that, through that lens, to be able to be the most efficient, but still be able to provide the best educational experience. To your first point, I can report the facts here at the microphone, but the work happens in our neighborhoods. It happens at our schools. Our PTAs are a part of that. It's word of mouth. It's moms talking to moms, dads talking to dads. It's at the grocery store. It's an all-hands-on-deck approach that we need in this community to revamp that reputation that absolutely right now at our schools is undeserved. We have the best schools in town, and we need to be out there and have everybody deputized within our organization and beyond to be out there telling our story. And that's how we're going to get people to come back to our schools and stay at our schools. Because I would put our district against any of those districts on that list, and I think we come out on top. And our students will come out on top compared to their graduates there as well. I can say it as passionately as I want here, but this has to happen out there. And that's where we need our board, our community, our staff, everybody, not just those that live here, but those that work here, to be a part of that conversation every single day. And that's part of Every Day Counts. It's not just about attendance. It's about making every day count for what we can do to better our future here as a district. Sorry, that was my soapbox. I'll step down.
No, thank you, because I mean, you know, we're counting on the state to give us, 2 and 3%. Oh, thank you so much, and I mean, if we can grow our way out of this as well, I mean, that will go a long way to supporting our staff and our students.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
No, it's depressing.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else?
I'm just looking forward, you said you're still compiling this data. I think that's going to be very, especially with particularly with the attendance. Where are they going when? I think all those numbers, as you fine tune those, it sounds like you're going to continue to drill into
Yes.
those. That I think will paint the picture, and it will give us some answers. I think there's a lot of reasons people leave. I can think of a dozen, not necessarily tied to safety or academics or things like that. And that data is going to tell us what it is, and then how we can address it, not just with ourselves, but with the partnerships that we have within the city.
Yes.
To address potentially the future educational opportunities that are kind of outside of our control. So I appreciate the work on this. I think it's going to tell us a lot, and I'm looking forward to more data.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we are on item O2, Business Services, Resolution 2024-2508.
We need
Oh,
a
I
mo-
am so
yeah.
sorry. I'm sorry, Rusty, and
Frank,
just
you gotta
not
get a hold of this
confident,
guy.
Frank. Yeah. We do need to approve the first interim report. If I could get a motion.
I motion.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Houston moves, Ms. Harper seconds. Please vote. The same music,
We didn't finish the song yet.
apparently. Okay, that motion passes 5-0. We are going to move on to Business Services Resolution 2425-08, the mitigation agreement, annexation of territory.
All right, I'm over here now. So this is for, as we've talked about previously, our Community Facilities District, and this is another development that's coming online here in town. The developer is asked to join our CFD, our Community Facilities District. This is a neighborhood that'll be built in the southwest part. It's in the Miller region, Miller boundaries, kind of very close to Del Lago, actually. And so this is asking, or recommending to the board that we would add this development to our annexable Community Facilities District. Any questions?
Okay, any questions? All right, looking for a motion.
I motion.
All right, Mr. Houston moves, Mr. Olson seconds. Any further discussion? Let's vote. And item O2 passes by a vote of 3 yea and 2 nays. Moving on to item O3. This is Resolution 2425-11, Statutory School Fees and Mitigation Payment Report. And this is the one that I believe we had the public hearing on earlier?
That's correct. So that was a public hearing. So this is the board to adopt the report that how much revenue we took in developer fees, more commonly known as developer fees, and then how we spent them. And in our report this year, we haven't expended any. It's a very short report in that way. We have collected some. But this is all that public hearing would be anybody given the opportunity to come on and speak about their feelings about developer fees. But for now, before you for vote is to accept the report as attached here to the board agenda with those items, the ins and outs.
And do we have any questions on the report? Looking for a motion.
Motion to accept.
Second.
Mr. Olson moves, Ms. Gardner seconds. Please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item O4.
All right, let's see if we can pull this off. Regarding case number 2024-25-0 01 on student expulsion. Recommendation to accept panel recommendation of full expulsion with placement at JCCS through December 17th, 2025.
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Olson moves, Ms. Harper seconds. Please vote. Oh, no, we need, no, this is a roll call. Yeah. Means the music. 'Cause I'm confusing everyone. And that motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 05, Ed Services 24-25 Comprehensive Safe School Plans.
Yes, so we are seeking approval for each school's safe school plans that were developed at the school sites and approved by their school site councils.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Ms. Harper moves, Mr. Houston seconds. Please vote. And that motion passes 5-0. Moving on to item 06, Human Resources Tentative Agreement with AAA.
Okay, so I am asking the board to accept and ratify the tentative agreement with AAA with amendments to the listed recommendation action on item 06. As this is a one-year agreement and not a two-year agreement, only for 24-25, in accordance with AB 1200 and Government Code Section 3547.5. This item includes a new one-year agreement with a correction to the background summary because it is only inclusive of a .62 salary increase with no addition to benefits, as well as an MOU listing reduction of days for 24-25 and a part-time extension of the certificated differential rate.
So to be clear, this motion would need to be moved as amended based on
Those amendments.
those amendments, those corrections, as the language on the body of the items attached are correct. The body of the item has information that is not correct.
The recommended action in this background is not.
So I move approval as amended. Is that all I have to say? I like that.
I'll second.
Ms. Harper moves, Mr. Olson seconds. And that passes 5-0. Thank you all very much. Thank you to AAA for that agreement. And we are moving on to reports. Mr. Olson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the community. Thank you to the cabinet and Dr. Ibarra. I'm excited to serve for another term. Thank you to our bargaining groups, AAA and CSEA. I've enjoyed getting to know the individuals and the members, and I look forward to serving. But I also want to acknowledge Mr. Vargas, who ran for this seat. It's all of us who sit up here know it's not easy. It's difficult to put yourself out there, so I know it's challenging on individual and family. So if he's listening or if he ever hears this, I appreciate his willingness to put forth his ideas and to get into the fight, so to speak, to convey and advocate for the things he cares about. So I just want to acknowledge his hard work because I know it's not easy. So again, looking forward to service. Congratulations, Mr. Paulson, again, and end of report.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Sorry, I think I haven't said this before. So I attended the Crane Watch 2024 at Mission Middle School. It was a very nice setup, and I also liked the live stream. So it was great to see that and all the work being done. I attended the PTA meeting for November, where they went over their procedures for financial controls and audits, which I thought was very important. And then we also had a presentation by Andy about our ELOP offerings. And I was also encouraged to see how they were talking about just the community offerings that are available, and so they could help spread the word on those as well. I attended the rugby championships at Rincon, where again the Felicita cheer team was there, and they did a great job. And then met the new head coach of the San Diego Legion. So I hope we're able to continue that program into the spring. I think that's what they're looking at, so that was fantastic. I also attended the community schools meeting. A couple highlights in there. I really like that they're doing weekly CSAT meetings for the Tier 1 and Tier 3 students. And they're also doing weekly attendance meetings, which I think is going to get at the heart of some of our issues. So I was encouraged by that. I attended the CSBA conference where we had, there was a lot of information. It's always fun when you go to the legal update and see your school as one of the slides, or your district, so that was always fun. But some good ideas. A couple of the highlights were, one of the quotes I liked where it said, "Leaders make conditions for teachers to make magic happen in the classroom." So I think that's really our job, is to create the ideal situation for our teachers so they can make magic happen for our students. So I really like that. And the other item I liked was they were definitely talking about math, but I'm sure this could be applied to any of our subjects. What caused them to think they are not good at math? What happened to a student where they don't believe in themselves? And I think that's something we could work on, is really instilling them that they're excellent and they can learn this. And another repeat theme was the increased rigor is important, not just to slough away at what's required, but actually increase it and push harder at it. I also attended a tour of Heritage Elementary with Dr. Ibarra. I went to the personnel committee meeting where they elected their new officers, and they actually just kept it the same, but that's okay. They did a great job. And then attended the FAR bike event. I also today attended the Salvation Army Angel Tree distribution event, and I wanted to give a shout out to our family liaisons, because I talked to the head sergeant there, and she said they had 580 families they helped this year, and she said a majority of them came from our school district, and it's the family liaisons who are really making that connection to the families and helping them with resources. So great job to the family liaisons for that, which was excellent. And I just wanted to say thank you to Frank for being such a wonderful president this last year. I liked your calm demeanor in running the meetings, and you did a great job, and we'll have to put up with Doug for this next year, but we'll manage.
Somehow we'll manage. Yeah, and I just want to echo Mr. Olson's sentiments about sort of the honor of representing this extremely wonderful school district that we all are associated with. I will agree with Ms. Harper. There is a perception that there are problems that might drive some families away. Those are perceptions, and yes, we need to change those perceptions. But in this case, I don't really believe they are reality. We have excellent educational offerings. We have excellent teachers. We really shine in so many ways, and I hope every teacher, every administrator, every one of our classified employees who may hear this understand how much they are appreciated, not only by us, but by the community at large. Yes, so just a couple of events. The rugby championships, the rugby program is absolutely excellent. I am very happy to say there is finally some movement in the high school district to bring rugby onto at least one of our campuses, and thank goodness for that, because we've got teams at every level, and it makes no sense for it to end at 8th grade. When kids actually start liking to tackle each other more when they get a little older. So we look forward to moving that forward. The bike event today at Farr Elementary, 78, I believe it was, third graders receiving bikes and helmets, and a little bit of instruction from the police department of how to wear those helmets safely. It's an absolutely wonderful event put on by the Sunrise Rotary and supported by all of the Rotary clubs in Escondido. I do have to look at that and just think about my neighborhood, because Farr Elementary is about 100 yards from my house. I wish there was something a little bit more that we as a district could offer in that situation, because we send the kids home with the bike and a helmet. What we're missing is the instruction of how do you ride the bike. Providing them with some events where they can safely use the bikes, so that they feel confident riding their bikes to school across, and crossing the 78. As it goes in front of their school. And so I just wish there was some way that we as a district could do something to provide a little bit of instruction, maybe even on the day that we were handing out the bikes, and then maybe follow it up with some bike rodeos and some other events, just a short little round-the-block bike ride supported by local bike clubs or whoever, I'm not sure, but something so that those bikes get a little bit, so we make sure that those bikes get the use and that the kids get the experience of using their bikes. So that's just a dream. Thank you.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good idea.
yeah. It's not some bucolic country road that they're able to ride on. It's pretty busy down there and pretty dangerous too.
And as I walked home, I did notice that I walked past a memorial for a student, a 14-year-old, who, on the same street corner they were giving the bikes away was killed just a month or so ago.
So, my turn?
Yes, I'm sorry.
I had the opportunity to attend the Mike Caston Awards from our Escondido Education Foundation, and I have to say I love those so much, and I wanted to give an accolade, a shout out to the people, the board of the foundation who worked so hard and combed through the applications, and to see all of the programs that teachers have come up with to educate, not just educate, but to excite their students about education. So I think it's something very special in our district, our foundation, and the work that they do, and the grants that they give out. And so thank you to them, and I hope we can continue that partnership. And that's one of the things that makes Escondido Elementary School District special, is the caring and the love and the people who stay. A lot of retirees stay and go on to that board because they love the district. That's my report. Oh, and Merry Christmas to everyone, and thank you, Frank, for your service this year, and I'm looking forward to Doug running the meetings in the next fiscal year.
I'm looking for the date of the auction for the Education Foundation, so that everybody can get their checkbooks ready.
It's in February sometime, usually. Yeah, let's see, February 7th. Yeah, we should all be supporting the foundation as much as we can as well, and getting the word out, because, again, it's for our kids. I'm done.
Okay. Well, I don't really have a report. I just wanted to thank everybody for all your support over the last year. also staff and cabinet. I appreciate all the work that you guys have done. Also for the teachers and everyone else that has been out there working. I know that we're coming up to a nice vacation, and which I know is very much anticipated. Wish you all a very Merry Christmas, and I hope that when you guys get back, everything will be calm, collected, and get us to the end of the year. So, and I'm looking forward to seeing Doug sitting in my chair for the next 12 months. So, thank you, Doug.
It's my chair now.
Oh, these petty politics.
No, just wanted to reiterate, congratulations to Doug and Mark. Looking forward to another 4 years. And then a thank you to Frank. Thank you. It was wonderful working with you. And happy holidays to everyone. I know we're all ready, and 3 more days. So thank you. That concludes my report.
All right. Well, in that case, I am very aware that we have another meeting. It's going to be a barn burner. I am looking forward to it. Okay, the next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held on Thursday, January 16th, 2025 at 7 p.m. at the Escondido Union School District, Carolyn Gilbert Education Center, 2310 Aldergrove Avenue, Escondido, 92029. We are adjourned. And I am going to turn the gavel over to Mr. Houston to open the next meeting.
And I'm calling to order the annual meeting of the Escondido Union School District Facilities Corporation. And we have a quorum, but we can move forward. Do we have any public comments?
None.
None, okay. And going to C1, the election of officers. Do we have a motion for president?
I move Doug Paulson for president.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you.
Oh.
Are we manually
Yes,
voting on that?
Oh,
Okay.
I'm not in.
There we go.
No, it was in. Wait a minute.
There it goes. It's coming up.
As long as you stayed in, you don't have to be on the agenda.
Okay, there it is.
All right, so that passes 5-0, I'll assume?
Yeah, I believe it does.
All right, looking for a nomination for vice president.
Motion to nominate Zesty Harper as vice president.
Second.
All right, any discussion or anything else? Let's vote.
No, my there it goes.
And that Zesty Harper wins the vice presidency by a vote of 5-0. Looking for nominations for secretary.
Oh, I nominate Mark Olson for secretary.
I second.
All right, Zesty moves, Frank seconds, Mark Olson for secretary. Mark, do you have any comments you would like to make? Okay, no campaign speech. Let's vote. And that one passes 5-0. We are now looking for nominations for assistant secretary.
I nominate Frank, please, for assistant secretary.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Harper nominates, and Ms. Gardner seconds the nomination for Frank Houston for assistant secretary. please vote. And the nomination of Frank Houston as junior secretary passes 5-0. Chief Financial Officer. Okay.
I nominate Joan Gardner.
Second.
All right, Ms. Harper nominates, Mr. Olson seconds. Joan Gardner as Chief Financial Officer, please vote. You're not even taking me seriously. I'm not even done.
Former CFO, Escondido Facilities Corporation. That's impressive. That's impressive.
Has everybody voted? Hey, vote for yourself there.
Yeah, get to
Mark tried that, you gotta vote.
Passes 5-0. Congratulations to Ms. Gardner, the CFO of the Escondido Union School District School Facilities Corporation. We are going to declare ourselves adjourned.
All right, see you all next year.
We'll see you next year.
Doug, can you sign this?